For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Mary Darling, and my husband and I own and operate Museful Intent, which is sort of a passion project where we self-produce my work because I'm a playwright and a director in town, so we've had a lot of fun doing that. We're very excited to be back for our second year for the library and the town's Pride celebration. So last year we did mostly just a reading of newer works that felt like they kind of fit into Pride. But this year we thought we would change it up a little and kind of have more of a panel kind of discussion with some of my friends on inclusivity in theatrical spaces, kind of just offering some suggestions, some things we've seen, some trends, some experiences, just while we all kind of think about like what is it to cultivate a space that is welcoming and safe for folks of all backgrounds and identities. And then we're going to end it on a reading of a new work. So not as much reading heavy this year, only because I didn't want to recycle content for the loyal viewers here, and thought we might have fun kind of having a discussion. So I'll kind of be asking some questions. We'd love to have audience participation, so if we're talking and you have insights or you have a question for us, feel free to go ahead and let us know. What you're thinking. I'll sometimes ask if anyone has any questions or thoughts. If you were someone who does, we'd love to hear it. And then, like I said, we'll end on a play. Margaret already stole my line about saying make sure you check out the art, and I'm sure we'll remind you again because there's a lot of really great art here. Again, Mary Darling, I use she, her pronouns, and everyone's going to introduce themselves, and we're going to go ahead and get started.
My name is Mikey Mestis, he, him. I own and operate Museful Intent with my wife, Mary. We hope you enjoy this discussion. I've considered myself an ally of the community for as long as I can remember, from being in Gay Straight Alliance when I was in high school all the way through. I just think it's a wonderful thing to have events like this to bring awareness, to be inclusive, and I'm just happy to be here.
And he's also now an actor, so
not really an actor.
Hi, I'm Michelle England. I have been a community theater actor since about 2001, even prior to, but in the community. So I'm officially from Worcester, and I use the pronouns she, her.
I'm Tay Galipo, they, them. I've been doing community theater in the area for about 11 years. This is my second time working with Mary, and I'm excited to get started with this. So,
I'm Billy Bolster, he, him. I got involved in community theater in 2008, I think. I saw an ad in the Southbridge Evening News back when we had it every evening. We had the newspaper come, and there was an ad that they were looking for folks to audition, not thinking that I would ever be accepted, but I was, and I've been doing it ever since and having a blast. I love working with Mary and Mike and Michelle and Tay, and so many of you here in the audience. So we're gonna talk.
Let's talk. All right, I guess I have to remember to do this. All right, so I'm going to queue up a question, and we're going to kind of chat through it. And again, I'll kind of bounce it back to everyone. If there's thoughts, if there's anything, we'd love to hear it. These are just some things we're noticing. Obviously, none of us are saying, definitely do this, but I think it's just kind of feedback as we all navigate theater together. And I see a lot of theater folks out here and other folks, so it's not just specific to theater. Some of these are things you might see in your office or, in an artistic setting or anything. So when it comes to meaningful queer representation, what can that look like in theater, both on stage and off stage? If there's anything you've noticed, if you've had any experiences, kind of curious what you all think about just the idea of making sure we're approaching things like this from an artistic lens. So, yeah.
So I can start,
yeah.
Billy. I think, from my perspective, I've seen an evolution of how queer folks are portrayed, not always for the better, not always for the worse, but it is more visible. I know that growing up, queer people were portrayed very stereotypically. If you look at things like the old play Mame, Ito, the butler, was very flamboyant and unfortunately also very stereotypically Asian portrayed. I don't know what other term to use for that. Again, a lot of whenever a straight man would play a gay character, it was over the top, or oftentimes, or very often, they had a very tragic life and a tragic ending. If you think about even movies like things with Al Pacino and things like that, gay people were portrayed as having very down lives. I think that has changed a bit, but I also feel like we're still stereotyped a lot.
I think that there definitely has been a lot of, like you said, evolution in that. I've noticed a lot, especially, I don't have a ton of theatrical examples for this, but in other spaces as well, like a lot of indie media online and stuff, it's either not specifically like, it's definitely not the focal point of their character. I've seen stuff where like you'll only know that a character is queer because they're this specific instance is she was looking at a magazine and it was women and she was, you know, getting excited by that, and that was the only reference. Otherwise it's just she's this character and her queerness is not inherent to the story, so it's not mentioned, you know.
Yeah, I feel like one thing, because we've had some of these conversations offline, and I think one thing we were noticing is that like, you know, there's some sort of evolution, and maybe at one time almost there was more of a call to kind of like have this story of maybe like the plight or the difficulties, but now we're kind of shifting into an era where it sounds like we're just trying to see representation included in any way, and it doesn't have to be like the only focus. Maybe like we are kind of, or folks might be craving more of a experience that's not quite like, hey, look at all of the hardships I've experienced only, and that's all there is to me is that. And I think that's interesting in the conversations that like we've been having about representation in work, and not just on stage, like we're, you know, other things too. And I think even from a writing lens, I think that's something I've had my eyes open to, and I do try to take feedback and try to work in different areas where I'm getting feedback from folks on like what do they want to see or what is representation, like in case maybe I'm not getting representation right. And I think that's a big part of being an artist in this time too, is being accountable and is taking feedback and is seeing like, hey, like what's working, and are folks coming to shows and feeling represented or feeling welcome even, because I think, and that's something we'll touch on too, like, you know, what is it that we can do to make people feel welcome in a rehearsal setting or a performance venue or, you know, in casting calls. So we'll kind of get on that too. But yeah, great. Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment. It's when you first said that, Billy, about how gay men or women were portrayed.
Yeah.
Were portrayed in movies or, and then I've seen a huge change. They are doctors, they are lawyers, they are people that have normal lives. They are not in therapy all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I think that that's huge.
Yes, if I could just add, yes, I agree it has evolved. However, I do notice that the majority of your queer actors or your queer characters are secondary characters. We're always like the best friend.
Absolutely.
We're always, you know, the one that loses out in the end.
Correct.
So we still have a way to go, but I think, yes, we have evolved a lot.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah,
The
Larry.
Boys in the Band was another example of a negative view of everyone is unhappy in that show, and whatever happens to them, it's all, at the end is a downer. That look at this, that life is horrible for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So that really showed it up.
I think that's good, and I feel like I always try to, like, maybe at the time, I love to, like, I like to try to think everyone had good intent, and I think, I'm sure the intent wasn't to do that, but I think it's interesting how we all are perceiving it, and just maybe, like you're saying, like, things have shifted. We're seeing doctors, we're seeing people that are people, and I think that's so great in so many ways, too. Yeah. Anyone else? Any thoughts?
Next question.
Next question.
Sounds good.
Yeah, love that. You kind of touched on stereotypes, Billy. Was there, like, I think that's such an interesting thing to to touch on, like from an acting standpoint or directing standpoint, have you felt like you've been given direction ever that like kind of leans toward stereotypes more? And like, what has that experience been like for you as an actor, or you know, any other situation? Like,
I would say yes. A lot of times I do get a secondary role, which I like. I like character roles. And the term I use is I'm asked to camp it up. Because I think the director or the producer sometimes expects that the audience will laugh more at a very flamboyant man. I think Michelle has some similar reverse experiences that
yeah.
that you might want to talk about.
Sure. So the reverse experiences are, for instance, whenever I character audition, I'm very aware that usually in a a classical setting, if people are strictly looking for a woman or strictly looking for a very feminine looking role, I will go out and I will purchase a wig, because I know walking in people necessarily won't take my look as
Like,
your
you think they won't see you as that role.
yeah, right, exactly. And so I know, like, oh, okay, I'll put on a wig, and that will help me because I will get more into the period piece. And I know, being is that it was done in a certain time, that's the only reason I would do it. But at the same time, it's also it's tough, because I also don't want to be judged on the way I look, and I would hope that whoever is casting wouldn't pay attention to that. And, you know, if I needed to wear a wig on stage for a performance, sure, why be it? So be it. I am a character actor. That is what I do. I'm okay with that. But same point, I do it because I know my look isn't for everyone, and that's,
Yeah.
it's something we all have to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really good point. Anyone else on that point? Yeah.
If I could just share
Yeah.
an anecdote of something that did happen to me once on stereotyping. I had been cast in a show, and it was a show that there were going to be children in the show. And I got called with the director and the producer, and they told me that they wanted to know if I had a Corey check done on me.
Oh.
Because one of the parents wanted to pull their child out of the show. Now, there were other men in the show, but it was because of me that they were doing this. And of course, I was like, oh, well, yeah, I'm Corey'd. The place I work at regularly does so with me. So the parent was advised of this, but still pulled the child out of the show.
Wow.
And I just felt like, why was I singled out? And I guess I knew the answer was because the straight guys are straight.
Yeah.
So that hurt. It really hurt.
Because I think it's not just I think part of what you're touching on that's so important here is it's not just stereotypes we're seeing that are written. It's these stereotypes are still existing in real life, and they have an impact on you and other folks in the community while we're doing work together. But then there's this sometimes secondary stereotype was this recent?
It was a few years ago.
Yeah.
And again, it did sting me a bit, but I do enjoy the theater. And I will say, overall,
Yeah.
the community theater groups that I'm involved with are very accepting of me. Very accepting. This was obviously an outsider coming
Sure, yeah,
into
yeah.
the group. So that,
And then it's tough because I'm sure, like, you know, you don't want to dismiss anybody, and you're trying to be, I'm sure, you know, as a business, you know, trying to be mindful of everybody's feelings and everything. But unfortunately, you know, sometimes
Yeah.
people still get hurt. Like, there's still a hurt that comes
Yeah,
with that.
it does.
Yeah, absolutely.
so,
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
hey, it happened.
Any questions or comments on anything? Right in the back, yeah.
Billy, do you think you could ever play a gay character without camp?
I think I have.
I think you have.
Oh, sorry.
I can hold it if you want. I don't
I
mind.
think
Yeah,
I
where's the
have.
microphone?
Mary actually had a great show last year, Average Hospital, where I was a gay character, but our lives, the actor, if I can identify that person,
I'm sure he'd love to be.
no. The actor that I played opposite is not gay, but the character was. So both of us were gay characters. We were married, and I think we were kind of dull. I think we were a dull couple.
We were a married couple fighting.
Yeah, and we were just having regular old daily arguments. But I was not asked. Mary, thank you, did not ask me to like go over the top with the character.
I think one thing, just to shed light on that, like we always talk about, and if you've worked with me, you hear it all the time, is like I really, as a director, try to find like the honesty in whatever it is. And I think we all have like an honesty to share that doesn't have to be a stereotype. It's, you know, like, yeah.
I think the honest part of it is that, for the most part, queer people are pretty boring. We're just about as boring as everybody else, you know? Yeah. So.
Yeah. We're all a bunch of boring people existing together.
Exactly,
That
yeah.
just want to exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, Patrick.
Billy, you talked about the progress that's being made, but I know a lot of community theater groups tend to fall back on the older plays, which makes sense. They bring in crowds, people are familiar with them, but they're not always the most progressive. So I was wondering if that's something you noticed too, and what you think community theaters can do about.
He's jumping ahead, folks.
He's jumping.
No, we're prepared to talk about this.
It'll give us a good transition.
It does.
So.
Yeah, I don't even have to ask another question. Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, I think we have a lot to say about this, actually.
Do you want to start on that?
If you want me to do all the talking here, but I think we have other folks.
Michelle, I'm even gonna
But very
pass this so
quickly,
you can, in case
I
you
think
feel
alternative casting and just thinking outside the box. I mean, we are seeing that in a lot of television productions now, where you have gay, lesbian, black, Asian folks playing roles. I think there was recently a production of, I want to say Cinderella, where the mother was black, the father was
Just more
Asian.
diverse
It was
cast.
an extremely diverse cast, totally blind to keeping it, the nuclear white family. So please talk.
And it is it's very popular with the younger generation seeing these kind of changes and these alternate casting. I think it was a London production of Starlight Express recently. Just their big macho like bully character, their basically Gaston character, was recently cast as a lesbian, like a butch woman who's very strong and macho and all that. And it was so popular on TikTok.
Oh,
Everybody loved it. I actually still have that song in my playlist. So.
I think one thing, thanks, did you want to
What I
just,
tell you?
I-
The microphone.
I know, mic on the mic. I think one thing that we think is helpful in a lot of cases, and obviously older plays aren't always written to do this, but I think our general consensus was, if it's not detrimental to the storyline, couldn't characters be played by anyone? And if that's something you're comfortable with and you think could be more gender, race blind, then that's one thing you can do when you're making an audition poster or whatever, to make folks feel welcome, like they can, maybe there's some folks who would prefer to take on roles that are non-binary or that are whatever the case. So I think if it's something folks are open to and they feel they can make those changes to an older text, then that's a great thing. I think for me, the other thing that can be challenging as a writer is sometimes I do see these plays done that have been done to death, for lack of a better term, and I get it that they're crowd favorites and they're whatever, but sometimes I do see something that I think, well, it's had its day and maybe it could be left in 1970 and we could put an emphasis on new work with folks that are telling the same stories, that are making, that as theater makers are creating work that's meant to be more inclusive of everybody and that maybe is more friendlier for the time. It's not to cancel that work. I'm not even big on cancel culture personally, but it's maybe just sometimes times change, the line changes, things change. And so I think that's a thing. But I think to your point, if they're going to continue to be done, I do think there's a way to open it up and maybe cast like, you know, a little more inclusive, for lack of a better term. Yeah, Sue.
Actually, I had an experience at Gateway that with John Kennedy, I was actually cast. I don't remember if you were stage manager. You probably were. The character was the landlord. Yeah, it was her. And the landlord actually called for a male character.
Yeah.
But John Kennedy liked me, and he actually and it was a beer drinking, rough and I had my house. But the reason I could talk like this is because I was smoking a lot. So that kind of was key. My
Yeah.
dad taught me when he taught me Blue Heaven to sing years ago. But he cast me versus, and I had my curlers and my, you know what I mean, and my bathrobe, but I had my beer in my pocket, and I was just one of my favorite. It was exciting for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think another thing that I've learned as a writer and director too, though, is like, you know, sometimes maybe early on I wasn't always, you know, and again, like I was writing like 15 years ago and things have changed since then too. Like terms have come out, you know, all these different things that like I'm always trying to evolve with it. So I think there's been times where folks have just asked me, hey, could that character be like, does that have to be a man? I'm like, doesn't. You're right. And I think I've like grown so much as an artist and as an ally and as like a person trying to create space for other people and trying to create relatable work that like I'm so grateful when people bring that to me because I do think we all kind of like grow together in that way. It's like it's been like a very moving experience as an artist. Yeah.
Yeah,
Go
it really
on.
has.
Yeah, Patrick asked such a great question.
You really did, like, really brought this one out. But one of the biggest things that we were talking about while we're having all these discussions privately was just about, you know, how this is always theater, not theater. It's always evolving. You know, like you are here today because you are supportive of the community and you are here because, you know, you want to learn, you want to be a part of the new, you know, like just you have an openness to everything, and that's very important. I feel anyone who's really contributing to any sort of event like this, you know, it's learning, it's evolving, it's changing culture, and it's very, very important. And one of the things that we were talking about is how in audition notices, for instance, you know, just putting out there that, for instance, one of the local community theaters that I work with on a normal basis puts out in their auditions that all actors will be considered for all roles, regardless of gender identity, expression, ethnicity, race, sexual orientation, age, ability, etc. It's so important to just feel welcome.
To even come to an audition.
Exactly.
Like, and I think that's a great one too because jumping the gun on the questions again. No, but I think one thing we wanted to touch on was language. Like, what is
Yes.
it that folks can
Yes.
do that's like, that is such an easy disclaimer to put, not even disclaimer, like a piece of information to put on an audition that where you're not alienating people. And it's not something everybody thinks to do. Like, I've not always done that on auditions. Like, I've not always thought to do that. But I think in, you know, getting that information, everything, that's something that someone who might think there's no role for me here wouldn't come, and they see that and they feel like, okay, this is a place I could be accepted. I like to think of theater as one of the most accepting places.
Yes.
And sometimes due to just lack of information, it might come off like that's not the case. And so I think that's such an important piece to do. I think that kind of leads me into another question too of like, what are some things folks can do in the rehearsal space or the performance space or from an audience space? Like, what can we do to be more outwardly welcoming? That's definitely one. And if you have any more on that too, just curious.
Another thing that was also listed was the specific roles are listed as presenting as female, presenting as male. So at least you know what you're going in for, but they're not necessarily casting for that. It's just that this is what is typically shown for that particular role. This particular audition that I was looking at is an older show. It was done in the 80s. So yes, it's very character driven, but you could change those particular roles. And again, I know a lot of changing languages in roles and in shows has to do a lot with what the authors list, and sometimes the theaters are not allowed to adjust whatever language they'd like to use. should they be able to? Yes, absolutely. But it is worth mentioning that sometimes the theaters that are putting on the works don't have the ability to adjust.
Right.
But again, maybe that's
Look
something.
at different work.
Exactly.
maybe, too.
Exactly.
I think another thing that can really help with making people feeling like welcome and everything, and this is not even just in like theater, this is just in everyday life. I think the normalization of sharing pronouns. I've been at read-throughs and everything where I wasn't gonna mention anything to like the group. I might have like, as we were talking individually later, just been like, oh, by the way, I use they them pronouns. But I actually had somebody who had been in the professional space, who after her introduction and everything, she was about to pass it off, and she goes, "Oh, by the way, I use she, her pronouns," and that made me feel like, "Oh, okay, I will mention it." Unfortunately, the person who had gone right before her immediately goes, "Oh yeah, which be," and then for her pronouns, which the word that rhymes with which was the second one, and then she very audibly but under her breath went, "I'm sick of that stuff." And I was like, oh, we're not going to get along as much as I thought we would. Okay.
I think what I like about what Tay just said too is it might not be something that comes to mind first for everybody, but just like, maybe if you're the director or if you're on the crew, that is something to implement. But if you're not and you're just a person sharing your name, that's a great rule of thumb to just go by. If you're comfortable with it, like that does automatically for someone who like Tay felt like might not want to share this and someone else did and it was like, okay, I can do that here. And so I think some of these simple changes can really open up the door for anyone to feel welcome. And I always, I do try to do that. And again, we're all human, we're not always perfect, but I think that's something to really keep top of mind. That really is just a very micro change.
And
that
in
can
a
make you feel
similar
great.
and in a similar vein, a lot of people who use not either they them pronouns or they're trans, and so they might get misgendered in conversation, even like normally for the most part for me it happens on accident. We're not always the most like on top of it to correct somebody immediately because we don't want to come off as like nagging. Now I'm not asking that everybody has to like babysit us and correct other people for us all the time, but just having that little bit of advocacy to just be like, oh, like if somebody was like, oh yeah, Tay, she's doing this, and if somebody's just like, oh, they, and then just correct and move on, so.
I think that's been helpful for me. Sometimes, well, accountability here. Sometimes I'm directing and maybe I have, an actor who's non-binary, but maybe they're playing a different role. And sometimes for me, the pronouns start to get jumbled. And I need that they, and I'm like, okay, thanks. Sometimes I'm talking about the character, sometimes I'm talking about the person. I don't know in that moment sometimes, but it's great for me to get a reminder. And I think it's helpful just because I'm like juggling the character names, the people, and all the things. And so I'm so appreciative of that and of that, Belle. Yeah, any other thoughts on this?
Just quickly, you were talking about rehearsal space, and one of the things that I've been grateful for in all of the companies that I've been working with is my husband, John. But the theater group is very accepting of us, I've found. And that's a great comfort. They'll often say, oh, is John coming tonight? Is John coming to the cast party? Is John, is John gonna be cooking tonight for us
We
when
all
we're done?
hope he is.
Yeah.
That's just because we prefer John. That's all.
Sorry.
Sometimes I think you might have said it best. We were having conversations. Just people don't know what they don't know sometimes, and it's not malice. It's nothing like that. It's just we don't always know how to operate in these spaces or what the best practice is. And you had said something great, Tay, about asking questions.
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak to certain aspects of this, but I think for most people in the queer community, especially I know a lot of people aren't super familiar about like what's socially acceptable to ask like a trans person, a non-binary person, all that stuff. Asking, as long as you're respectful, like don't ask about people's bodies, about what they've got going on, all that stuff. But like, my sister has fully said to people who were like nervous to ask me questions about like what pronouns I use or what all this stuff. She literally has gone to them and been like, ask me the question and I'll ask them because I they don't care if I'm rude to them, basically, because she'll be very blunt with me. But no, I am always, and I think most queer people, trans people, non-binary people are very open to answering questions. We want to make sure that people understand what's, going on, and as long as you're respectful about it, yeah. So.
Yeah, I think that's good information. Question? Yeah?
Just kind of related to that, I was wondering, in that situation you mentioned at the read-through with the woman who said the B word, what if anything, would you have wanted to see from Ally?
It's a good question.
I am a very non-confrontational person. I think there's a couple of different ways. The more confrontational version would have just been like an actor being like, hey, that's not cool, and then just like moving on. Or even the director like pulling her aside and being like, hey, can we not? Basically just like talking. You don't have to put her on the spot. I know a lot of people get extra defensive, and that will further entrench them in their beliefs on these kind of things. I think just gentle correction of like, was that necessary? Like, it didn't help anything,
I
It wasn't
think even a comment
constructive.
almost like, hey, let's be respectful to everybody here.
Exactly.
Like, might be,
Yeah.
not that like, but I think like you're saying, like, not that you always want to default to a blanket statement, but if it's almost like a first, a thing like that, where it's like, well, maybe we could make a general statement here. Maybe, we like to assume maybe people just didn't think we should be respectful. Let's operate like, hey, and then, more corrections as needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyone else on this topic?
I would ask Mike, as an ally,
Yeah.
and having grown up as an ally. I'll be honest, I grew up in the 60s and 70s,
Yeah.
and we did not have gay-straight alliances in my school. We didn't even have gay-straight people in my school.
I can share a brief story of me being a little, maybe overly confrontational, maybe it wasn't, but this was, late 2000s, probably 2008 or so. I had a neighbor, friend who I'd went to school with, who was in the process of transitioning, and we're very close with their family, and it was at a family party. They lived across the street from my aunt. The father was very upset and very vocal that this was happening, and how could this have happened to my daughter, and how could this have been whatever. And I, probably in a not so polite way or not so nice way, I said, it's just absolutely unacceptable. It's your child. He wasn't happy with me in that moment, but over the years, it's become more accepted within that same family. And he came up to me probably 10 years after that event, has a great relationship now with his child. And he just thanked me for saying, hey, you really put that in perspective. I might not have liked what you had said at the time, but you're right. I'm not saying cursing somebody out and putting them on a spot in front of a lot of people is always the best way to go about handling things. I'm not particularly a confrontational person by nature, but I think in some instances there needs to be a loud advocacy for some of these things. You have to normalize these conversations. I don't know how it's 2025 and we still have to scold and remind people, hey, just be decent. We're not asking you to change your belief structure. We're not asking you to be different. We're just asking you to be decent.
Yeah. And I think a lot of allies really need to know that they do, as much as it might not necessarily feel like it, you guys have a privilege in that you won't get the same level of pushback because we are already thought of as the lesser, and you're kind of you're on that level, and so what you say to them will it'll reach them a little bit easier.
I think that's really interesting too, because I know it's interesting to hear Billy's perspective, the 60s, the 70s and stuff, and what it looks like now and how there's still all these issues. But we have an 11-year-old and their perspective is so open. And that's not to say that's like that for everybody. We're very, we're pretty open-minded folks ourselves. We have a lot of these conversations in our house and stuff, but it's so refreshing just that it's no extra thought. Oh yeah, so-and-so's parents are gay or this, and there's no judgment.
nothing.
There's no anything. And it's such a great thing to see that kind of change happening where you can just hope that it continues on.
Yeah, I just have to second that. I'm so proud of Kyrie, and she doesn't tolerate any ounce of homophobia.
She stands up.
Not in art, not in media, not in day-to-day life. It just absolutely it's a non-starter. Where I feel like we grew up in a generation, Billy, probably a little bit different than yours. My generation was a little less rigid, but there were still questions on gay marriage was a big topic when I was growing up, and should they be allowed to marry? Are we even talking about? Like, how is that even a
Yeah.
question? It baffled me, but there was some of that struggle growing up where people of my generation had it. I think this generation after us
Yeah,
doesn't have that same.
There's
Yeah.
nothing, and I can completely agree with you because I have a 10-year-old daughter, and she only starts questioning anything when someone else mentions it to her that it seems wrong. And then she comes and asks us, like, why would someone have a problem with so and so having two moms? Or why is it wrong that so and so has two dads? Like, there's no question. She doesn't see any of it until it's brought to her. And if we ever have to explain it to her, she's appalled. She's absolutely appalled
Yeah.
that it's even ever occurred or ever happened. And history to her right now is very interesting.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because she doesn't grasp the concept of so much hate.
Yeah.
And that is it's a breath of fresh air to know that there's this generation that is coming up that just is so accepting.
I love it. I think it's
Yeah.
great. I think just being mindful of time too kind of brings us into our next thing of like, and it's so hopeful. And I think we kind of wanted to end on just like kind of a wrap up of like what we hope to see moving forward. And happy to hear from you all too, just on like, you know, the work we can all continue to do to cultivate a space that is, you know, non-judgmental, welcoming of everybody, not just even the queer community, but, you know, an emphasis on that today and stuff. But I think some of what we're saying is really just kind of making changes to the language where you can. Like if you're putting out a casting call, who is it hurting to put that at the end? And nobody, actually. It's really probably bringing more folks. And we all know sometimes it can be hard to get folks to come out to auditions. So why wouldn't we want more people to come? And I think as a writer, you know, even making notes that, you know, of female presenting even in casting descriptions, or of, you know, an asterisk that lets you know that, like, you know, the pronouns in here are they, them, and you can cast gender blind when applicable.
Some of you, or probably most of you, were here for when we did the reading of Remedial, Jordan's play. He actually had it in the script, like, this is completely gender blind,
Yeah.
like writing. Change the pronouns as you see fit, cast whoever you like, whatever pronouns anybody wants to use is fine. And all the names were pretty
Yes.
gender neutral.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't necessary to anything, so why bother picking one, you know,
I love that.
basically. So
Yeah.
It worked out well.
it did.
Any other tips from anyone up here, or just thoughts on kind of
My new mantra, be nice. It's not that hard.
I love that.
Thank you, everybody, for being here this evening and for doing what you do and for being so inclusive and for doing it here at the library and supporting the library as your safe place as well and promoting that. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. So I do want to let you know that you're about to hear a 5-minute play. Typically, I have discovered that Mary's short, little, tiny 10-minute, 5-minute plays become full-length plays. So you are getting a sneak preview of something that may blow up and become something big in the future when we produce it for 2 hours. But for right now, do not worry. A 5-minute play by Mary Darling. There are 3 characters. Jude. Jude is Joe's best friend. They can be of any gender. Joe, who is Jude's best friend. Joe is female presenting. There is a server, a cafe worker, who can be of any gender. At the beginning of the play, 2 friends are catching up at a cafe. A server brings them their coffee orders.
All right, I have an iced vanilla oat milk latte for you. And here's your hot black coffee with 2 sugars.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Can I get you anything else?
Are you hungry?
I can't tell yet. I'm just excited to finally see you.
Me too. It's been too long.
We're all set for now.
Okay, enjoy your drinks.
I mean, it's only been like a month, but it feels like 5 years.
Tell me about it. So, what's new? How was the trip?
The trip was good. It was nice to see my grandma and everyone else.
I'm so glad to hear that she's doing better.
Me too. It was scary for a minute. Enough about me. Let's talk about you.
Okay, well, nothing too crazy here, but I did want to talk to you about something.
Uh-oh, this sounds serious.
No, it's nothing crazy or anything.
Okay, well, stop stalling.
Well, okay. So, I met someone.
When do I get to meet him?
So, actually, that's the thing.
Oh my god, I'm sure he's great, and I'm sure we'll all love him.
She.
Great, we'll love her. When do I get to meet the lucky lady?
Wait. That's it?
What?
I just low-key came out as bisexual.
I know, I'm so happy for you. This is so exciting.
Well, yes, but your reaction was just so
Did I say something wrong?
No, you were perfect. Alarmingly so.
Do you want like a do-over? Like, should I respond better?
No need. I guess I just thought, like, it was a bigger deal.
Well, it's as big of a deal as you want it to be. You're my best friend and I love you.
I love you too.
I'm so excited that you met someone and that you feel comfortable coming out to me.
Thank you for being you.
Should we celebrate?
I wouldn't say no to one of those fancy, oversized donuts.
We can make that happen, but before I do, can you tell me more about this mystery person?
We should get the donuts first.
Don't worry, I got you.
How I missed you and your bad puns.
I'll be right back with 2 fancy celebratory oversized donuts.
You're the best.
Joe sits for a moment. We see them feel truly happy. The stage fades to black. End of the 5-minute play.
Awesome. So we just want to thank you for coming out. If you were at our reading last year, we did do a reading of a play at that time that was called Park Bench. Some of you might have seen that 10-minute play. Just want to plug that it's now a film debuting in the Shawnee Film Festival, July 19th. So if anyone's interested in what's come of that piece, you can see it then. It's now called Aerate because it's taken on a new life as a film. So just want to make people aware of that story. And if you know, you know, and if you don't, you should come check it out.
It'll be at the Hilton Garden Inn in Worcester.
Hilton Garden Inn in Worcester, $10 tickets, July 19th, 5 to 7.
Thank you.
Thank you all.